as you might see when you compare this headline with what you find in the... Sorry? Oh, sure, sure, yeah. Yeah, what you will see when you compare the headline with what you find in the program, you will see that it's slightly different. So in the program, there's the term slow journalism, and here it's saying where's the sustainability movement for journalism, and that's due to the conversations I had during the last days and all the talks that I heard here in the last days, and something that I lacked in a lot of the conversations or in a lot of talks I heard was this feeling that we're really thinking long term. Like we're so busy trying to like following what's going on, like with the latest change of the Facebook algorithm and like I don't know, like where we suddenly grow like video experts, where we actually have like a writer staff and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's really time to think more long term and to start like something like a sustainability movement. I'm going more into detail when it comes to that, but first I want to present you Piqd because that kind of sparked the whole interest in this topic for me. Piqd is a sort of program guide for good content on the web. So think about it like a portal for film critiques or like a portal for product reviews. So if you want to like buy a driller or you want to buy a car, you obviously read up online and check up what's the best car to buy, what's the best driller to buy. If you want to invest like an evening in the cinema, you consult like a film critique and see what's the best movie. For journalism, weirdly, we don't have this really. We don't have like something like a film critique that gives you an answer how you can like optimally invest the 20, 30, 60 minutes you have to actually read journalism. And that's what Piqd provides. Our mission for publishers is that we distribute relevant content for free, unlike Facebook, of course. So for us, it's really important that that the publishers perceive us as an ally. We are always like really transparent where we link to. We don't necessarily want to keep the traffic on our site. We really make transparent where the real links are and send qualified traffic to the publishers. The mission for readers is to provide a bullshit-free information environment. And bullshit, I mean, not like in the movies, but like Harry Frankfurt referred to in his essay on bullshit. So just read this out loud. Bullshit can be neither true nor false, hence the bullshitter is someone whose principal aim is to impress the listener and the reader with words that communicate an impression that something is being or has been done, words that are neither true nor false and so obscure the facts of the matter being discussed. I think that's a feeling that we all know very well when we find ourselves being caught on Facebook longer than we actually plan to. Like we just want to browse for 5 minutes and suddenly we click on this link and on that link and we're knee deep in bullshit. And with Piqd, we really wanted to provide this, like an environment without bullshit. And how we're going to do this is by using the expertise of 100 experts. Experts can be journalists, politicians, and academics. So we have like some of the most renowned journalists in Germany working for us. We have like members of parliament working for us. We have really renowned academics working for us. And what they do is recommending content, like what you do in a curator. We have several kind of channels, like this is, for example, Media and Society, and you can subscribe to a channel, and when you subscribe to a channel, you automatically subscribe to the whole, like, sort of, all the experts in this channel. So you don't have to pick, like, individual experts, but you have to pick, like, resorts, like in a newspaper, and then you automatically have all the experts also subscribed. But if you should be bothered by one or the other expert, you can mute them. Those are some of the channels, and this is actually the core. So if you click on one of those items here, you will come to this view, and this is what Piqd is all about. So this is the review basically, and this is what sets us apart from all the other curation platforms that are out there. Like we really we pay our experts that they invest the time to write a proper review of the content and always answer the question, why is this worth the time of the reader? This has to be clear. So what we want to guarantee is if you feel like interested in what the expert is writing here and you click on a link, that there's basically a 0 chance that you are disappointed. The business model is, on the one hand, newsletter marketing. So the main product is our newsletter. I guess you also heard about that in other talks, like the comeback of the newsletter. I can definitely say that's true in our case. Traffic on our website is there, but it's really hard to like build a new brand and get people to like go to your website every day. But the people who subscribe to our newsletter, they read us basically every day. So we have an opening rate of 60%, which is quite solid for a newsletter. Or actually it's really good. Like the New York Times is 70%, and that's basically like the king of the class. So we're really happy with this. And yeah, so that's one of the revenue streams that we plan to implement. So we just have like ads in the newsletter, and the other part is native advertising. That means that brands can come to us and say that they want to have their own kind of like topic that they want to place on Piqd, and what we do then is we accept that they suggest the topic, and we will also add 2 to 3 like independent experts, so that we can guarantee it's an interesting and not just a PR channel. And then they pay for that. And the interesting thing is, like, we're very young. We just started at the end of 2015, last year. And so we haven't started really implementing the business model. That's just the plan. At the moment we're focusing on growth, but even now we're already like approached by brands, so it's really nice that we see this seems to work actually. Okay, so but what has this to do with the slow versus sustainable journalism that I mentioned or touched upon in the beginning? So in the beginning we thought that Piqd would be a platform for what you call slow journalism, like the long reads, the stuff that is like rather timeless, the stuff that you read like on Sundays on the couch. But we found that our experts interpreted their job a bit differently. They often post videos, they often post like sometimes post studies, sometimes they post like entertaining stuff, sometimes like short stuff, sometimes long stuff. So you can't really say it's about slow journalism. What we found though is that around half of the sources our experts recommend, they're not from mainstream media. There's a lot of independent, of small publications that our experts dig into and recommend content from, and that what is kind of interesting me actually more than this slow journalism debate, because when I look at all the independent and small publications in Germany that a lot of the Piqds, that's how we call the recommendations, are coming from, you will find like highly motivated, very skilled very skilled, very motivated newsrooms, but they're all struggling, and I think they're struggling more than is necessary, and there is very little help for all those newsrooms. Like alone in Germany, like there are so many projects like during the last years. There's like Correctiv, there's Crowd Reporter, there's Perspective Daily now. They just like finished their crowdfunding. There's Substanz. There's actually a lot going on, but all of those newsrooms, they all have to fight terribly hard to cut through the noise, to build their brand, to build a sustainable business model. So I think it's really important that we think about how can we like build an environment where those kind of young upstarts are striving, because the big possibility they have is they can start a business now. They start in this time. They start in a digital environment, and they can build their whole business and their whole like newsroom culture for this environment. And this, I think, is a huge opportunity compared with like the mainstream media, who have this like huge challenge that they have to somehow make this transition work. And I mean, when you listen to all the talks, you will hear how confused they are. I mean, there are so many things that they have to deal with that it's really hard to plan for them long time. So I think it's for a sustainable journalistic environment. I think it's really worth focusing on the younger startups and think about how we can make life easier for them. I mean, we think we do our part, like a very small part, by just paying like a very fair salary for the expert journalists that work for us. So we pay 500 euros for 12 Piqds. So that means like the experts that are working for us, they commit themselves to recommend 3 Piqds each week. And that, if you calculate it, like if you divide it by 12, 500 by 12, that means 40 euros per Piqd. And I mean, Piqd is something like an extended Facebook post, so I think that's a very fair salary, but obviously it's not enough. Okay, so when we think about sustainability, like there's this classical model of all sustainability movements, like we have the sustainability basically has to somehow connect the three dimensions: economy, environment, and society. When we talk about journalism, I think environment per se is not that important. It's not really about like the pollution. That's not really the biggest topic that we face in journalism. It's more about the information environment. And the question that really puzzles me is why we don't see something like the bio movement, like eco-food, like the green energy movement or the fair trade movement for journalism. And what I mean with this is, like, if you look at all those three examples, they always like follow the same pattern. Like, first, it's all about the access. So if food is scarce, it's just like having the access to food. If energy is scarce, it's just about having access to energy, and so on and so forth. And then once you have the access, it's about the quality suddenly. And the weird thing is that journalism, like 100% fits into this pattern. Like, first information was sort of scarce, now information is abundant, like the access is not the problem anymore. And now we should like really see the shift that we all worry about the sustainability and the quality. And it's not really happening. And I think one of the reasons this is not happening is the lack of narrative, really. Like, if you think about like the green energy movement and the eco-food movement, it was all accompanied by narratives, by storytelling from mainstream media. And we don't really see this with the sustainability debate in journalism itself. Like, mainstream media is not really telling compelling narratives about how a sustainable media environment could look like. We are all way too busy just to keep our heads above the water instead of like really thinking long term. And another point, like at least in Germany, is also that there, like in the journalism bubble, there are a lot of haters. So I think it's also one reason we don't see this kind of positive narrative is that we're way too busy to like pick at the flaws of the competitors. So I would be really happy to like kick off a small debate about what sustainable journalism or how sustainable journalism could look like. And this is a very tentative kind of manifesto. And please take this with a grain of salt, because I would just basically wrote this down like during the last few days, and this is just like up for debate now. And just going to read this quickly, and then afterwards want to go into some dilemmas to make it more transparent what I mean with those challenges. So the few things I think are important for a sustainable journalism environment is that sustainable journalism owns its own distribution channels. It requires a diverse newsroom, is discursive and dialogical. In sustainable journalism, there's zero tolerance for hate speech. Sustainable journalism respects users' data. It supports original reporting. It's complementary and based on cooperation, not competition. It's based on business models that guarantee editorial independence. It's woman and man-made, not produced by software. And it requires fair salaries. And as you see, that I mean, each point like is full of dilemmas and yeah, like full of problems. And into some of them, I wanna dig into now. So when it comes to distribution channels, I mean, when you start a new media entity these days, it's really hard to impossible to ignore Facebook. So even we, and we think of ourselves as a kind of sustainable startup in journalism, like even we, of course, use Facebook, because otherwise we have no idea really how to make people aware that we're existing. And also as part of a mission to distribute the content, like the relevant content. But we thought about, so first of all, the way that we use Facebook is by really making it clear from the whole strategy that it's not about like increasing just the Facebook reach, but really turning, like we build a funnel that guarantees that the people come through Facebook to our website and subscribe there. That's the reason and the goal that we use Facebook. And but as you can see, like this is an example post that we published. From the 21,000 people we reached, 255 people actually click on the link. Like it's 1% of the whole reach is actually ending up on our site. And I think that's a very typical sort of example. So I mean, you often see that like there's this huge like clicks, but that's actually, when you look on Facebook, they always add like other clicks in the link clicks, so they always like give you out a higher number than the actual traffic that ends up on your site. So this doesn't look really sustainable, and at the moment we kind of feel we're dependent on it, but like one kind of compromise would be, and that's actually what we're thinking about now, is that we limit ourselves and say like we use this channel, but only up until we have 10,000 newsletter subscribers, and then we're not any longer throwing money at Facebook. I'm not sure if this is a sustainable strategy. We will find out. We're going to try this for sure. But I think it's definitely worth thinking about, like, first of all, like, be aware that you use Facebook in a way that it pays on your sustainable, like the channels that you own. Like, so don't use Facebook for the Facebook sake, but really use Facebook in a way, and be sure that you can measure that the traffic ends up, or the reach that you produce ends up in a communication channel that you own. That is either your newsletter or text messages. And yeah, and another thing that would maybe be interesting to find out, or to just try, is to limit yourself and say, okay, we have a clear goal, and maybe even ask your readers to help you reaching this goal. And once you reach this goal, you just stop spending. You still are on Facebook, but you just don't pay any money anymore. Where this goal is, I don't know, but I think it's just important that you reflect upon that there has to be an end you throw money at Facebook, because, I mean, Dan Gilmore said that, and I think that's a very good quote. Like, when you sit in a hole, the first thing that you should do is stop digging. And I mean, even though we don't really know how we get out of this hole, like, supporting Facebook in this way obviously just gets us deeper in that hole. Okay, the next problem is when we look at diversity. I mean, like I said, we're a new media project, and we think of ourselves as sustainable, and we had this goal to, yeah, be also like not replicate the problems, diversity problems that we see in other newsrooms. And those problems, like, just for Germany, that's by the source is Piqd, which is an initiative to increase the ratio of women in newsrooms. I mean, this is how it looks like at the moment in newsrooms in Germany. So the FAZ, for example, has like 8.7% of women in leading positions, and yeah, and the best in class is weirdly Handelsblatt with 25. And Piqd requires that there should be at least 30%. That's what they're fighting for. Same problem, that even though it's not talked about that much, is like the people with migrant background. So there are around 25 Germans with migrant background, but when you look in the newsrooms, there are 2 to 3%. There's a new initiative now, like a sort of Piqd, but for people with migrant background, which is called Neue Medienmacher. It's only in German, but for the Germans, it's definitely worth checking out. So how does it look like in our case? I mean, we reached the 30%. We're like even a little bit on top of us. We have from the experts, we have 33%. When it comes to the journalists with migrant background, or experts with migrant background, it's 10%. But you obviously see it's not something that we can be proud of. Like, we still have to really work on that. And that even, like, and one category of diversity that's we can't measure and is not even talked about is like journalists from non-academic backgrounds. And I think that's also really, really important, because this is a reality that is sort of like non-existent in many newsrooms, that we just have people who are not coming from a household, from a family where both parents studied, that grew up in like a urban environment. I mean, yeah, so I think that also definitely belongs to the diversity problem, but it's not even discussed at the moment, and we don't even have numbers on that because it's not measured. Okay, and then the next problem when it comes to avoiding hate speech. So I said, like, in my perception, like, to sustainability, there belongs that it's a hate speech free environment, and we found a way, I think, and we borrowed that from Crowd Reporter, actually. So we have a sort of like a troll barrier. We per se, we are free, like, everything is for free, but if you want to comment, if you want to vote, upvote or downvote, or recommendations, so if you want to be part of the product really and not just a consumer, you have to pay. And we obviously know that only very few people will do that, and the reason is not really that we want to make money with it, but the reason really is that we want to avoid hate speech, and that works very well. Like the colleagues from Crowd Reporter can say, I guess they have the same model. It works very well there, and it works with us. So this sounds like a solution. It's definitely a solution to the hate speech problem. But obviously, you lose a lot of engagement, and like engagement is really important these days. So that's something, yeah, but that you have to basically live with. It's definitely a drawback. Yeah, so I mean, ideally you can afford comprehensive community management. If you don't, look for low-effort alternatives to foster dialogue, and like a low-effort alternative would be this kind of troll barrier where you have to pay to comment. Yeah, and then we have the big issue when it comes to data. I mean, we are using MailChimp, even though MailChimp is not like super, like it's not really respecting privacy the way that we wish. And we use Google Analytics, and of course that's data is also not like only staying on our hard drive. I don't really know what's an alternative to MailChimp. I mean, there's Piqd when it comes to alternatives to Google Analytics. But to be honest, I don't think that like respecting users' data doesn't necessarily mean that you can't use MailChimp or that you can't use Google Analytics. I think it just means that you really have to be like, yeah, I don't know, like define or like be as careful with the user's data as you can be, because it's sort of ridiculous that, I mean, we need this information. Like we need to know how users are engaging with our product, what they like, what they don't like, how they use it. And when you think about all the data that they give to Facebook and Twitter, I'm not sure if we have to be like holier than the Pope, as we say in Germany. But anyway, that's up for debate. Okay, now we come to the, I think, crucial and most interesting point, and that's the business models. Because as you can see, it's like the sustainability basically is just like making it, if you want to be sustainable, it really just makes it harder for you, because you can't go a lot of shortcuts, you can't always go the easier path. So like I said, I would like to focus on the upstarts here. So it's the question like how can we make it easier for them? And so I think we actually have to be a bit more political about this whole situation, because we see like the problem is that a lot of startups, like, they're hoping for money from the publishers, and the publishers won't give them money. They're hoping, of course, like for money from Google, and maybe Google is giving them a little bit of money, but I mean, Google also can't and won't pay you forever. So, but what we don't really see is like more claims to the government, and I don't mean that the government necessarily should like hand out money just like that, because obviously that's a problem for independence. But there are some, like, at least in Germany, there are some really concrete measures you could take to make it easier for young media startups. And one of those concrete steps could be, for example, that you stop requiring journalistic foundations that they have to pay taxes. So in Germany, and I know in many other countries as well, like, I was quite surprised in the conversations that I had to hear that Germany is actually not the only country. If you start a foundation and journalism is your key purpose, you can't be a tax-free foundation. So what a lot of foundations have to do is, for example, build like a sort of second branch that is committing themselves to the education aspect. And then somehow, like, the tax authorities say it's okay. So Correctiv, for example, who's a foundation, they make huge efforts in education programs. Toriel it's like the biggest portfolio platform in Germany for journalists. They also had to start like an academic, the academy where they offer education, just so the tax authorities accept that you are actually a foundation and people can donate and don't have to pay taxes on that. So I think that's a very concrete measure you can take without really losing independence, just like really build up some pressure. So you can start journalistic foundations without always having to offer this education branch, which obviously requires like a lot of resources. And then in Germany and also like at least in the countries that have like public broadcasters, I mean, Germany, of course, like is I think it's ridiculous, like how big the public broadcasting system is. I mean, we have like a public broadcasting system of like yearly budget of 9 billion compared with like the American, the U.S. Public broadcasting budget of 700 million. Like it's just crazy. I mean, 700 million in America, 9 billion in Germany, and I think it's definitely worth. Like it's a no-brainer that we should build up like some pressure that like at least a couple of millions are getting out of this huge budget and are like in a sort of fund to support like young journalistic startups who maybe then like commit themselves to those kind of like sustainability criteria that we could elaborate on, and also like there are so many options. Like you could also say like donors, for example, if they donate something to like journalistic startups or foundations, then you would get the same sum out of this public grant, for example. So there's so much possibility in terms of what we can actually demand from public support, like from state support, and I don't really see it. And I think a problem we don't see is having this conversation is that the mainstream or the big publishers they have so many issues that they have to fight for, and also they're entangled in so many dilemmas that it's not really in their interest to have this conversation, and also they know that a lot of the money wouldn't necessarily end up in their pockets. So I think it's really up to the public, up to freelance journalists, up to startups to have this conversation, actually start being political and make political claims, because yeah, if we want to have a sustainable information environment, then it's really time that something changes. I would leave it here and just go back quickly to this slide and maybe open the room for debate. Like what are your thoughts? I mean, sorry that this is all a bit blurry because, like I said, this is like I prepared a different presentation, but it's just I was really bothered with the conversations that I had, and I think it's, like I said, it's time that we get a little bit political and think about like more long term and more what we can do for small startups. So what are your thoughts? I'm interested in your opinion. No one has any no thoughts in this room?
How did you? Oh, sorry. So Piqd, how do you go about the funding problem? How did you get around that? And have you got any tips for other startups in that area?
I mean, we are in the very lucky position that we are like funded by a donor, like a wealthy individual who, like one of the very few who thinks that it's not necessarily the biggest goal in life to like acquire more and more wealth, but who thinks like let's do something productive with this money and reinvest it in journalism. But I mean, he's paying a high price for that, right? I mean, the money that he's investing in Piqd, for example, Piqd is not a foundation, so it's not like deductible. And I think that's why I think it's so important that we really like change something legally, so we maybe have more people being willing to invest their money and not being punished for that necessarily.
About the manifesto, I think the danger with putting up such manifesto is always not to insult those who are still in the market, because if you put this up to like a public broadcast responsible guy, he would probably say, well, that's what we do, that's what we have done. We have always been sustainable and we have our ratios, etc. So what's the difference then?
Yeah, but do you really think that they could like back up the claim that they like fulfill all the criteria here?
No, surely not. There's a discrepancy between theory and practice in their structures, but if you're talking about politics, on the paper they all have their ideals, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, like with the bio siegel, for example, like the eco kind of certificate in food. I mean, it's the same thing, right? I mean, there are criteria that are tested, and it's not enough to just like write something. Like if you're a bio farmer or eco farmer, it's not enough that you say like, well, I think what I'm doing is quite eco. I mean, there are criteria that you have to fulfill, and you have to prove that you fulfill that. And that would be the idea here as well. Like maybe really come up with something like a certificate and some testable kind of criteria. And if you fulfill this, then you can get a subsidy of some sort or profit from those funds.
I think there are many journalism prizes and grants that people of those organizations have won, so they might think those are like a label for it.
It is. I mean, the prices are a label for the quality. So I'm not saying that like the publishers are not producing quality content. I mean, we are totally dependent on what they do. And I mean, one of the reasons we founded Piqd is that we think there's like outstanding quality out there, and most of it from the big publishers. And we want to help them like raise awareness and raise the reach. So this is not at all a fight against the publishers. But I think there has to be a more sustainable funding for young upstarts. And the big publishers, I don't think, qualify for this, and they don't have to qualify. But the young ones could qualify for this. And winning a prize for a young startup is like worth nothing, basically. It's just like helping the reputation a little bit. But I mean, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 euros is like, yeah, it's not really sustainable.
Oh, my question is, who is choosing the experts who are picking the articles?
That's me mainly. But the way that we go, so I mean, first of all, it's like any journalist would do that. We just research who's an expert in the field. So if you write a journalistic piece, you also research like who could be an expert that I could interview, and that's exactly the way that we proceed. So it's not very untypical. And the moment we have found some experts in specific fields, we ask them who we should talk to as well. So we start with the experts that we research, and then we ask the experts that we found who has a great reputation in their field, and then we dig deeper.
Hi. You had your points of sustainability criteria. They are very idealistic. And I would just want to take a step back and ask you, what do you mean by sustainability? If it's just a financial or quality journalism, or the reach out to the audiences. So, for example, there are many entertainment websites that are financially sustainable, but
yeah, I mean, entertainment, is obviously not what I have in mind when I think of journalism. And I mean, yeah, I think it's sort of in the word sustainable. It just means that like you have to come up with criteria that are not just valid for today, but that are really valid for the long term. And yeah, like I said, I mean, this is just like a first draft, a very tentative first try. But I think it's definitely worth, like in this environment, like, and especially when like at this conference where it's all about like just like trying to catch up with everything that's happening around us. I think it's really important to take a step back and look at like how can an environment look like? How can journalism exist that is not dependent that much on the platforms that we don't control? Like using the platforms, of course, but using it in a way that it helps us build like independent distribution channels. Because that's, I think, the biggest challenge that we have at the moment. Like, yes, there is a big problem in funding, but the biggest problem, midterm and long term, is the distribution problem. Like, how can we make sure that the real good content that's out there is reaching like a critical mass in an environment that's less and less in our hand, and that is working in a function that has nothing to do with our relevance criteria as journalists. And it doesn't have to. Like, I don't think like it's our goal, and it's like realistic that we can change Facebook. Like, I mean, of course we can like build up political pressure, and then maybe we can split up Facebook at some point, but it will never happen that journalists can like dictate the logic of the Facebook algorithm. That's not going to happen. So I think, yeah, that for me that's the core of sustainability. Like, really think how can we use all these digital tools to like again be more independent in our distribution. Right. Okay. So. That's it. Thanks a lot, and I'm of course happy to continue this conversation. very well when we find ourselves being caught on Facebook longer than we actually plan to. Like we just want to browse for 5 minutes and suddenly we click on this link and on that link and we're knee deep in bullshit. And with Piqd we really wanted to provide this an environment without bullshit. And how we're going to do this is by using the expertise of 100 experts. Experts can be journalists, politicians, and academics. So we have some of the most renowned journalists in Germany working for us. We have members of parliament working for us. We have really renowned academics working for us. And what they do is recommending content, like what you do in a curator. We have several kind of channels, like this is, for example, Media and Society, and you can subscribe to a channel, and when you subscribe to a channel, you automatically subscribe to the whole, all the experts in this channel. So you don't have to pick individual experts, but you have to pick resorts, like in a newspaper, and then you automatically have all the experts also subscribed. But if you should be bothered by one or the other expert, you can mute them. Those are some of the channels, and this is actually the core. So if you click on one of those items here, you will come to this view, and this is what Piqd is all about. So this is the review basically, and this is what sets us apart from all the other curation platforms that are out there. Like we really we pay our experts that they invest the time to write a proper review of the content and always answer the question, why is this worth the time of the reader? This has to be clear. So what we want to guarantee is if you feel interested in what the expert is writing here and you click on a link, that there's basically a zero chance. Our mission for publishers is that we distribute relevant content for free, unlike Facebook, of course. So for us, it's really important that that the publishers perceive us as an ally. We are always really transparent where we link to. We don't necessarily want to keep the traffic on our site. We really make transparent where the real links are and send qualified traffic to the publishers. The mission for readers is to provide a bullshit-free information environment. And bullshit, I mean, not like in the movies, but like Harry Frankfurt referred to in his essay on bullshit. So just read this out loud. Bullshit can be neither true nor false, hence the bullshitter is someone whose principal aim is to impress the listener and the reader with words that communicate an impression that something is being or has been done, words that are neither true nor false and so obscure the facts of the matter being discussed. I think that's a feeling that we all know. As you might see when you compare this headline with what you find in the... Sorry? Oh, sure, yeah. What you will see when you compare the headline with what you find in the program, you will see that it's slightly different. So in the program, there's the term slow journalism. In here, it's saying, where's the sustainability movement for journalism? And that's due to the conversations I had during the last days and all the talks that I heard here in the last days, and something that I lacked in a lot of the conversations or in a lot of talks I heard was this feeling that we're really thinking long term. Like we're so busy trying to following what's going on, like with the latest change of the Facebook algorithm and I don't know, where we suddenly grow video experts, where we actually have a writer staff and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's really time to think more long term and to start something like a sustainability movement. I'm going more into detail when it comes to that, but first I want to present you Piqd because that kind of sparked the whole interest in this topic for me. Piqd is a sort of program guide for good content on the web. So think about it like a portal for film critiques or a portal for product reviews. So if you want to buy a driller or you want to buy a car, you obviously read up online and check up what's the best car to buy, what's the best driller to buy. If you want to invest an evening in the cinema, you consult a film critique and see what's the best movie. For journalism, weirdly, we don't have this really. We don't have something like a film critique that gives you an answer how you can optimally invest the 20, 30, 60 minutes you have to actually read journalism. And that's what Piqd provides.